Hello everyone, this is Rui PCB, your trusted PCB partner. Today, we'll be introducing how to batch modify trace width or layers in KiCad. When using KiCad, we often encounter a problem, how to batch modify the width of traces, as well as how to change the layer of objects. In this particular session, we'll introduce several effective methods for making these important changes, and we highly recommend utilizing the powerful property editor within KiCad. First, our initial method is to use the Edit Tracks and Vias Properties tool. Let's first see where it is. Under the Edit menu, there is an option called Edit Tracks and Vias Properties. Clicking it will bring up this window. The upper part of the window is the filter section, where you can choose between vias or traces, and there are several filter options. The first filter is by net. If you don't check it, it won't be applied. But as we can see, selecting this will display all of our nets. If you want to modify the width of traces for a specific net, you can use this filter. The second option is to filter by net class. We set up a test net class, a default net class, and an all net classes option. The third filter is by layer. Since we have a two-layer board, there are top and bottom layers. Next, this filter is by trace width. We can set a value to filter only traces of that width. Then we can filter vias by size. This one is for trace width, and this one is for via size. For example, if you encounter a situation during design where the via size is too small for manufacturing, you'll need to make batch modifications. When it comes to manufacturing, if the manufacturer says, hey, your vias are too small, which could increase costs, then we need to modify them in bulk. Suppose I have used a lot of vias. If I were to modify them one by one, it would be very troublesome. So we can modify them in batches. For example, if your 0.3 millimeters vias are a bit too small and you need to change them to 0.4 millimeters, you can filter for 0.3 millimeters vias here and then modify them below. This option is select only in current selection, which means if I select the region first, it will only filter within that area. The filtering options provided by KiCad are actually very flexible and can basically meet all kinds of needs we might have during use. Next is the operation window. Here, you can set values to specific ones, change the layer to a certain layer, modify the line width, adjust via sizes, and change the annular ring, which is the outer ring of the hole. So let's do a simple test. First, let's filter only the traces on the top layer. After filtering, we'll change the layer, modifying the top layer to the bottom layer. Let's see what effect this has. When we click O, you can see that all the traces have become bottom layer traces. Now let's filter the bottom layer and change it back to the top layer, so it returns to its original state. This is how you filter by layer. Next, let's add another attribute filter, top layer 0.2 millimeters traces. So let's filter again. Now, under the filter condition for the top layer, we'll change it to the bottom layer. Look, the thicker traces haven't changed, only the 0.2 millimeters traces have changed. So what if I want to modify the trace width? Let's take a look. There are no values in the trace width field. Why is that? It needs to be set in the PCB settings. In the PCB settings, under rules, there's a predefined size. This is for trace width and via size. Just now, the via options were also empty, so we need to add them as well. For example, I can add a 0.3 millimeters trace or via diameter. Then, when we use the filter to modify, you'll be able to see it. When we modify the trace width here, now there are preset values. So this value can't be entered manually. It must be a preset value. We can make some changes. The trace width has changed. Right now, nothing is selected, so we need to select the bottom layer, and then you'll see the trace width has become thicker. You can see the value now. That's one method. Another method is to use the properties editor. The property filter is on the left side. Let's take a look at the properties. Trace. We can use the filter at the bottom of the toolbar on the right. For example, if we still want to filter traces, we deselect all, then select trace. Then say I only want to modify this section of the trace. So I select only this section will be selected. After selecting, click the properties tool, and then we can see that we can modify the trace width, layer, and so on. All of these can be changed. For example, if we set them all to the top layer, see everything changes to the top layer. As for the trace width, if we enter 0.7 or 0.8, all the traces become wider. So this is also a way to modify them in bulk very convenient. In this session, we introduced two commonly used methods for batch modifying trace width. Method 1 is more suitable for modifying the trace width of specific nets or net classes, while method 2 is more flexible and can be adapted to different scenarios as needed. Alright, that's all for today's content. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel for more videos. Thank you everyone.